Early modern British literature, a la Shmoop. The next time you step into your time machine and are trying to decide when to set your coordinates, we don't recommend the early modern period. Not unless you particularly enjoy plagues, fires, regicides, and dubious personal hygiene. We're talking about the period of time directly following the Middle Ages. Back then, if someone maced you, you wouldn't get back up for a while. Times were rough in early modern England, but it doesn't mean that nothing good came of the era. There was plenty of great literature written in 17th century England, which was great because then you had something to read while you were dying of smallpox, and it took a while to die of smallpox. The King James Bible was a biggie. It contained symbols and genres that we still make use of today, as well as such memorable phrases as "ask and it shall be given," "let there be light," and "fight the good fight." In its time, it was more quotable than Anchorman.
Stay classy, early modern period.
A few days later, John Milton wrote a blockbuster hit,
Woohoo.
Paradise Lost. It was the most epic since Homer's Odyssey. Unfortunately, James Cameron wasn't alive at the time to adapt it to film,
I'm the king of the world.
but it still did pretty well in bookstores. The book's cast of characters included, most of the same cast as the King James Bible. God, Jesus, Satan, the whole gang. But are you ready to be really impressed? Milton was blind.
What?
He wrote the entire thing by dictation. So for all we know, Milton wasn't a good writer at all, but the guy taking dictation was brilliant. Poetry became quite popular in the first part of the century, even if it was pretty limited in its subject matter. These metaphysical poets basically only wrote about either sex or God. If you weren't a big fan of either, poetry probably wasn't going to be your thing. Later on, a rival gang of CAVALIER poets popped up. Oh, those gangs. Yeah, it was intense. Jets versus Sharks, Montagues versus Capulets sort of thing. Once in a while, someone would get limericked to death. Hey, we warned you, these were dark times. One of the CAVALIER poets, Robert Herrick, made a name for himself with poems that urged his listeners to seize the day and the girl. He might have been the first newsie. But enough with the rhymes. How about the guy named Samuel Pepys, who started recording his life just like any 21st century hipster, but without the knit cap and handlebar mustache? Well, okay, he went through a phase. His 9-year-long diary recorded everything from the Great Plague to fantasies he had while at church. And they were more elaborate than simply fantasies about the pastor having a decent singing voice. Then James Boswell published a biography of 18th century celebrity Samuel Johnson. He was sort of like the TMZ or People magazine of the early modern period. Without him, no one would have known what all the stars were wearing to their premieres. Eventually, literature had a clear new direction. It was moving away from the super complex, super elite world of metaphysical poetry and biblical epic, and was starting to focus more on everyday life. People were realizing that it was actually more interesting to read about themselves than about a bunch of gods, kings, and monsters, although the stories that combined all of the above were generally the best of the bunch.
It's alive! It's alive! It's alive!
I'm the king of the world.